as I promised last meeting, a legal opinion on the on-call pay, and there were two, which resolution is in effect and who would be entitled to this on-call pay. We want to just get this clarified so we can move on. And are there any questions? This would be a good time to discuss it when all five of us are here.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get to see this document until it was posted to the agenda. That's not very collaborative. The last one I read contained phrases that I found very prejudicial towards my employees in my department. And given that I was one of the 5 people on the city council and I wasn't spoken to about this, the context of the charter is not considered here. The context of appointing authority is not considered here. And further, how do you know the legislative intent if you never talk to the people who actually were in the conversations?
Okay, so I mean, I understand the objection. What I want to do is just get an opinion out there, and then
sure, I'd love one that's well informed. This isn't a well informed opinion.
Well,
if there's 3/5 of people who were involved in this action, you don't even talk to them. One of them is a sitting council member. That's a problem. Don't you agree? I was there. I can provide context. I understand as the appointing authority what my responsibilities are to define the priorities within my department. None of that's in here.
So,
I reject this.
So we can do one or two things. I can ask for more detailed opinion.
No, I'm just suggesting that this is a flawed process, and if we're going to work together, this isn't how you do it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. What I can do is just say, thank you, and then we can do that. We can expand this opinion and do
this
the things we want to do.
This is an unnecessary witch hunt.
Yeah, I mean, my intention here is just to get moving on this, just make a decision on it and move on. So
we're going to make a decision without proper consideration of all the elements. I mean, this
no,
does nothing.
Yeah. All I want to do is get the opinion, and then we can take that under advisement. And
What's germane is that it was not properly recorded, and it was not reflected in the minutes the way it was supposed to be, and it was not put forward as an action of the city council in the way that it was supposed to be.
Okay.
That's a responsibility of the functioning of this body.
So tomorrow night, I just want to announce it, have Dave give his opinion, and move on.
Well, again, and we've had this discussion, under finances, IT, and IT is critical infrastructure for the city. We do have times when the server goes down, or the website goes down, or a portal goes down. And in fact, Michelle Madigan, he did add a little bit in one place, but has not actually, acknowledged that IT is critical city infrastructure that is 24/7. And if any of those pieces go down, it impacts the entire safety of the city, including police and fire. These are not my words. These are, the former Commissioner of Finance's words that say the Finance Department must ensure that citywide data network department, IT, is sufficiently staffed to ensure the city is safe and functioning at all times, 24/7, 365 days, or each and every year. If the IT department goes down, city government can be compromised. If police or fire departments lose service, the city can be unprotected. If a cybersecurity attack occurs, the city is vulnerable to service blackouts, compromised confidential data, and massive costs ultimately borne by the taxpayer. So, we have had situations where a server has gone down or a portal has gone down, and those are the only times that we have had our deputy on call, especially during important transitions like we are going through with Munis, or we go through with changing over to Microsoft Outlook. So I think that needs to be accurately reflected in this.
So it's sorted there, but you want it more clear?
Yes. Okay. Just as DPW is essential, as is IT infrastructure.
Everything is essential. If the people who work inside the building don't put in the extra hours to get things done, the government stops working. This agenda process completely stops. We did a tremendous amount of work to support the processing of the purchasing and transactional requirements for Station 3. That doesn't happen without my department working with Chief Dyer. Extra long hours.
I don't think anybody disagrees.
Listen,
But it was just
it's not even been in the context of a conversation because we weren't drawn into it. That's the problem.
So we can correct
I think
that.
here it says, Section 15 says it clearly applies to Deputy Commissioner of Public Works, who at night, on weekends or holiday receives emergency calls due to water main breaks, etc., which is absolutely 100%.
Yep.
But that's where it should also say that this applies also to the Deputy Commissioner of Finance, because of IT. Calls are, again, something that happens on night, weekends, and holidays.
It says it. It says it in Section 17, just not as
It
explicitly.
says it could also
Yeah.
apply. It
Yeah.
doesn't say definitively that this is critical infrastructure that should apply. I think also is a piece here that's like, well,
I think
no.
the difference is that the regularity of it applying in public works is why it's identified as this is clear versus the one-off nature of an IT emergency. There are IT emergencies every weekend. I think that's the difference.
No, I understand that, but when we are going through transitions, IT emergencies happen
Yeah,
often.
I think that's why
And
it's
again,
identified. You can identify it clearer, but I am saying it is identified. It clearly says that this can apply to Commissioner of Finance
Right, but
emergencies. So
I think it's important to note that IT is critical infrastructure for the city, and therefore just as important to be recognized separately. And again, like I said, those were not my words; they were the former Commissioner of Finance's words.
And I don't think anyone would disagree with that.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
it's literally just a frequency issue. That's why this is an obvious one versus this is a less obvious, but can still be called out.
And that's what I'm asking for, is that it gets its own separate space to get
I think
not
we
an
can-
not an afterthought.
I think we can do that. I just wanted to respond that we're looking at it and that,
So what's the rush?
yeah, there isn't any rush. This isn't
It's
an
on the
opinion.
agenda, and I didn't even get to look at it. I'm asking, what's the rush?
There's no vote on it.
I
All
know,
we're
so
doing
what's
is-
the rush? What's the rush in not having the context of conversation with Commissioner Sangvi about IT? What's wrong with having the conversation about what's important to my department? I don't think he, in the 3 weeks he's been here, knows anything about the importance of the things that happen within my department and the priorities that I've set for the greater community, because it's talking about responsiveness to community needs. We can define emergency a lot of different ways. An emergency to me may not be an emergency to you.
Well, and in this case,
In what case?
no, I'm just saying.
We're talking about a thing that was written and was a
I'm-
compromise amongst
I'm
the minds
listening.
of 5 people.
I'm listening to you.
And we didn't talk through how did we get here. It's imperfect. I'm not a fan of it at all. But if it applies to one, it applies to all.
Yeah, one, thank you, by the way, for talking one at a time. When we were listening to that meeting where this whole question came up, that was a big problem. That's why there's,
I just don't understand the rush, sir. That's all.
okay,
We
so
should-
what
we
would you
should talk-
suggest we do?
I would suggest we have conversations internally to address this and not air it out halfway done to the community.
Okay, so maybe
A little late for that.
take this presentation off.
I don't see the value in having this discussion when it's incomplete. At least 2 people sitting at the table are not happy with how our departments are reflected. And I don't understand what we're trying to accomplish with this.
Okay. Well, we can,
This seems like a flogging.
yeah.
This seems like we're setting people up to take more body blows over
Well, I
something
don't-
that has nothing to do with them. And
Well,
I'm
that's-
not happy about the way that,
I can
that
tell you
folks
that's
have
the
been treated.
last of my intentions.
Well, but again, intent and outcome are the outcome is what matters.
All right.
Yeah, I think there is value in having more discussion, and frankly, we're having discussion. Maybe this first draft of the memo is the thing that continues the discussion.
Appreciate that,
I
Commissioner.
do, I agree that if there's concerns that want to be, we want a different resolution or a different, answer to the need, then we can have that discussion. I don't think there's actually a problem with, starting with this and saying, okay, now are we iterating? Are we coming up with a different solution? But I also think that, as I said to you yesterday, having a legal opinion about what is versus what we want aren't the same thing. So
No, not at all,
I
but-
just want to differentiate. Like,
Sure.
he's telling us what we actually voted on and how he's interpreting it versus what you're saying now, which is,
Well, I know what
it
I
doesn't
voted on.
actually
Yeah.
reflect what I want this to say and what I think it did say. I don't know that they're the same
I know where
thing.
you're coming from on that, Commissioner. It's not what I want it to say. It's the context of the conversation about what these things meant. And we have someone who doesn't have full consideration or understanding of what the things meant and is imparting their own opinion with very little information. That's all.
Well, I mean, this is a legal opinion,
It is an
so-
incomplete one at best.
So what would you suggest we do?
Not do this, that's for sure. I wouldn't have put this on the agenda like I asked you to. Well, actually, I didn't even know this was going on the agenda. I asked to have it provided to me, and it got provided to me the day after the agenda came out. So that's the problem.
So you want to provide more input to Dave
No,
before we have this discussion?
I want to understand what the end goal of this is, because it doesn't seem as if it's a thorough and comprehensive understanding of the circumstances. It doesn't. It seems like, I don't know, kick the can down the street. I don't know what's going on, but this is not, I don't see any value in this conversation about a half-written document that half of us don't agree to.
It is interesting that this is the only time that we can all, at one
That's
time,
horrible.
discuss it. We've been trying to discuss this, one at a time to everybody, and
We haven't gotten to that point
No.
yet. So I would say that would be a good starting spot, is to have everyone have the opportunity to sit down and talk about something before it goes out in the public.
How about we pull this for right now and then continue the discussions internally and then bring it up to the next meeting perhaps? That way,
And to the extent it even needs, I mean,
There's
we've had
nothing
this-
that needs to happen.
Yeah, this is an internal process conversation. It doesn't have to be discussed at the table.
I mean,
my whole
that's
point.
up to the mayor's office, so I'm giving him that option, but I think it makes sense to pull it right now.
If we change it, if we're going to bring a new resolution, then we have to do that. and
Absolutely.
that will be at
Absolutely.
the table. I mean, from Commissioner Songby, I didn't actually hear you saying you disagree with this memo. I heard you say you want it to be clear
Yeah,
that it's
don't let me
IT.
put words in her mouth. I'm sorry.
So I just want to make sure we're all having the same conversation. I feel like you're more of you disagree with the.
I disagree with the process, Commissioner.
Okay.
If I'm not allowed to even speak to an issue that I'm being talked about in, and people are talking about my intent, I have a problem with that,
well,
as anybody would.
are you talking about the process of how it's vetted?
The whole thing.
Okay. When you say-
Everybody raised their hand who got the chance to talk to David Harper about this.
You're talking about the process of talking about this in
Yeah.
advance of it getting on the agenda.
Yeah.
Got it.
Everyone who didn't talk to David Harper about this raised their hand.
I did not, but I did have correspondence with him through email. But in my view, this was passed last year.
Exactly.
The question is, what are we trying to accomplish? And I think the legal document's a good starting point, and we can have further discussions on it. And
I just
think
don't
it's pretty
understand
sim-
why
it's
this
just
is
very
a public
simple to me.
issue when I don't even know what's the intent. Like, what is the outcome? We do things for a reason, right? A plus B equals C. You're in the A plus B part, but we already have a C, which is this document that's been thrown out into the public that doesn't accurately reflect what I feel to be the circumstances around the passing of this issue. It was a year-long negotiation I was in the room for almost every single time. The idea that I wouldn't ever be talked to it's absurd to me.
All right, well, thank you. I think we talked about this. Let's move on to the next thing. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for this discussion, though.
Of course, no,
It's
it's
important.
again, Mayor, this is important. We haven't been able to do this type of conversation in the past without it devolving, and I appreciate the opportunity to do this, right? This is the right way to communicate and to work through things. But again, had I had the chance to talk, we wouldn't have this conversation now.